The September sun barely crept over the Baltimore skyline when Marcus Hayes woke up on the cold bench outside Penn Station. His jacket, 2 sizes too big and smelling of mildew, did little against the pre-dawn chill that settled into his bones. He was 11 years old, and this was his 4th night sleeping outside, 4 nights since everything fell apart. Marcus rubbed his eyes and sat up slowly, his entire body aching from the hard wooden slats beneath him. Around him, the city was beginning its morning ritual, delivery trucks rumbling past, their brakes hissing, the distant wail of sirens, the metallic screech of the first trains pulling into the station. The sounds were familiar now, though they'd terrified him that first night when the group home had kicked him out for fighting back against Derek, the older kid who'd stolen his mother's photograph, the only thing he had left of her. The social worker, Ms. Patterson, had said she'd find him a new placement within 48 hours. That was 96 hours ago. Marcus had waited at the McDonald's on Charles Street for 2 days, nursing a single order of fries, checking his phone, now dead, every few minutes. When she never showed, he'd understood what he'd always suspected. Nobody was coming for him. His stomach cramped with hunger. He'd eaten nothing yesterday, except half a bagel he'd found in a trash can outside a coffee shop, still wrapped in paper, barely touched. Pride had nearly stopped him from taking it. Nearly. Marcus stood and stretched, wincing as his spine popped. He needed to find somewhere to wash his face, maybe use a bathroom. The station would open its public restrooms soon. He'd learned the timing, 6:30 a.m., when the morning shift security guard, a heavy-set man with kind eyes, unlocked the doors. That's when he first saw the dog. It appeared from an alley across the street, a mid-sized mutt with patchy brown and white fur, one ear standing up and the other flopped down. The dog moved with purpose, not the aimless wandering of most strays Marcus had seen around the city. It trotted directly to the corner of Monument and North Avenue, where a boarded-up pawn shop stood like a wounded soldier, its windows covered with plywood tagged with graffiti. Marcus watched, curious despite his exhaustion, as the dog sat down precisely in front of the shop's door. Not beside it, not near it, directly in front, centered perfectly on the threshold. And then the dog just waited. Its posture was alert, ears perked forward. Well, the one that stood up anyway, tail still, eyes fixed on the door, as if expecting someone to emerge at any moment. Marcus glanced around, wondering if he'd missed something, if maybe the shop was actually open, despite appearances. But no, the heavy padlock on the security gate told the truth. Nobody had been in that building for a long time. Weird, Marcus muttered to himself. He waited, watching the dog, expecting it to give up and move on. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The dog remained motionless except for the occasional twitch of its ear when a car passed. Marcus found himself fascinated. In the chaos of his new reality, the constant fear, the gnawing hunger, the exhaustion that never quite left, here was something strange and unexpected, something that wasn't about survival or suffering. After 20 minutes, the dog suddenly stood, gave itself a full-body shake, and trotted away down Monument Street, disappearing around another corner. Marcus blinked. What had he just witnessed? The morning continued its routine. He used the station bathroom, washing his face with cold water and trying to make himself look less like what he was, a kid with nowhere to go. He drank water from the fountain until his stomach stopped cramping quite so badly. A woman buying a newspaper glanced at him, her expression flickering between concern and discomfort, but she said nothing before hurrying to catch her train. By 8 a.m., Marcus had positioned himself outside a Dunkin' Donuts, watching people come and go, hoping someone might leave something edible behind or, in a perfect world, offer to buy him something. A man in a suit walked past, talking loudly on his phone about quarterly earnings. A mother dragged 2 children by the hands, both of them whining about wanting donuts. An elderly woman with a shopping cart full of what looked like her entire life moved slowly past, and when she looked at Marcus, he saw recognition in her eyes, the kind that said she knew exactly what he was going through. She paused, reached into a plastic bag hanging from her cart, and handed him a banana and a granola bar without saying a word. Marcus took them, throat tight. "Thank you," he managed. She nodded once and kept moving. He ate slowly, making it last, sitting on the curb with his back against a parking meter. The banana was overripe, but tasted like a feast. The granola bar was generic, probably from a food bank, but he savored every crumb. As he finished, movement caught his eye across the street. The dog, the same one from earlier, was trotting back down Monument Street toward the boarded-up pawn shop. Marcus stood, brushing crumbs from his jeans. He crossed the street, keeping his distance, and watched as the dog repeated its ritual exactly. Same spot, same posture, same unwavering attention to the locked, abandoned door. This time, Marcus settled onto the curb about 20 feet away to watch. The dog noticed him. Its eyes flicked in his direction once, but showed no concern, immediately returning its focus to the door. 30 minutes later, just like before, the dog stood, shook itself, and left. Marcus sat there long after the dog had gone, staring at the boarded-up shop and wondering what story lay behind that strange, devoted ritual. By the third day, Marcus knew the dog's schedule as well as he knew his own survival routine. Morning appearance, 6:45 a.m., give or take 5 minutes. The dog would emerge from the same alley off Monument Street, trot directly to the pawn shop, and sit. Duration, 30 to 40 minutes. Then it would leave, heading west toward the harbor area. Evening appearance, 6:15 p.m., like clockwork. Same approach, same position, same weight. Duration, 20 to 30 minutes. Then it would disappear back into the alley. Marcus found himself organizing his day around these appearances. In the morning, he'd watch the dog's ritual before beginning his own, finding breakfast usually from dumpsters behind restaurants that threw out day-old food, washing up in public restrooms, keeping his presence low profile enough that police or social workers wouldn't notice him, but visible enough that he didn't attract the attention of the more dangerous street population. The afternoons were the hardest. The hours stretched endlessly, each minute a battle against boredom, loneliness, and the creeping fear that this was his life now, forever. He'd walk the inner harbor sometimes, watching tourists take pictures of the water and families laughing together, feeling like he was observing a different species. He'd sit in the public library when it rained, pretending to read while actually just absorbing the warmth and the sense of normalcy that came from being surrounded by people doing ordinary things. But evening always brought him back to Monument and North Avenue, to the corner where the dog performed its ritual. On this particular evening, a Thursday, though Marcus was starting to lose track of days, he sat closer than usual, maybe 15 feet from where the dog waited. The September air had turned crisp, and he'd found a sweatshirt in a donation box outside a church, faded blue with ravens printed across the chest. It helped against the chill that came with sunset. The dog arrived exactly on time. 6:13 p.m. by the bank clock down the street. Marcus watched it take its position, and for the first time he really studied the animal. Its fur, though patchy and dirty, showed signs of having once been well maintained. The brown patches were a rich chocolate color beneath the grime, and the white sections had probably once been bright. Its body, while thin, wasn't skeletal like some strays he'd seen. Someone had cared for this dog once. "Who are you waiting for?" Marcus asked quietly, not really expecting an answer. The dog's functional ear swiveled in his direction, acknowledging his voice, but its eyes never left the door. Marcus pulled the raven's sweatshirt tighter around himself. "They're not coming, you know. That place has been closed for a while." He could tell by the way the plywood had weathered, the way rust had begun to eat at the security gate's hinges. Months at least, maybe longer. The dog remained still, patient, faithful. A painful recognition twisted in Marcus's chest. He knew that kind of waiting. He'd done it himself, sitting in the McDonald's for 2 days, believing Ms. Patterson would come back for him, believing the system wouldn't just forget about him, believing someone, somewhere, cared enough to follow through. "Yeah," Marcus said softly. "I get it." He sat there with the dog for the full 30 minutes, both of them waiting for things that weren't coming, When the dog finally stood, shook itself and prepared to leave, Marcus made a decision. "Hey," he called out gently. The dog paused, looked at him directly for the first time. Its eyes were brown, intelligent, cautious, but not fearful. Marcus pulled the last quarter of a sandwich from his pocket, turkey and cheese from a Subway dumpster, still fresh enough to eat. He'd been saving it for later, but hunger was a familiar companion now. He could manage. He tossed it gently toward the dog, making sure it landed a respectful distance away. The dog regarded the sandwich, then Marcus, then back to the sandwich. After a moment's consideration, it stepped forward and ate quickly, efficiently, the way animals do when they're not sure when the next meal might come. "Good, right?" Marcus said. "Not fancy, but it's food." The dog licked its chops and looked at him again, and something passed between them. A recognition of shared circumstances, perhaps. Two creatures surviving in a city that had forgotten them, both waiting for someone who wasn't coming. Then the dog turned and trotted away into the alley, and Marcus was alone again. That night, sleeping on his bench outside Penn Station, Marcus dreamed of the boarded-up pawn shop. In the dream, the door opened, and a figure stood in the threshold. He couldn't see their face, couldn't make out any details, but the dog in the dream ran forward, tail wagging frantically, whole and joyful. When Marcus woke up to the sound of early morning trucks, his face was wet, and he couldn't tell if it was from the light rain that had started falling or from tears. The next morning, he arrived at the corner at 6:30, 15 minutes early. He wanted to be there when the dog arrived, wanted to not be alone for those moments, even if they were sharing their loneliness silently. At 6:47, the dog appeared, but this time, when it saw Marcus sitting on the curb, it paused. Its tail gave a single, small wag, barely perceptible, but there. Then it took its position in front of the door and began its wait. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in weeks. They waited together. The following Tuesday brought the first real cold snap of autumn, and Marcus woke shivering so hard his teeth chattered. The bench outside Penn Station offered no shelter from the wind that had picked up overnight, cutting through his clothes like they were paper. His fingers were stiff and pale when he finally managed to sit up, and his breath came out in visible puffs. He needed to find somewhere warmer to sleep. This wouldn't work much longer, but that was a problem for later. Right now, he had a routine to keep. By 6:40, he was at the corner of Monument and North, stamping his feet to keep blood flowing, hands shoved deep in the pockets of his Ravens sweatshirt. His stomach growled. He'd found nothing to eat yesterday except some crackers that a librarian had given him when she'd noticed him looking particularly desperate. But he'd learned that hunger was something you could push to the background if you had something else to focus on. The dog appeared at 6:46, and Marcus noticed immediately that something was different. The dog's gait was slower, more careful. When it sat in its usual position, it favored its left side slightly, and Marcus could see it trembling, not from cold, but from something else. Pain, maybe. "Hey," Marcus called softly, taking a few steps closer. "You okay?" The dog glanced at him, and Marcus saw exhaustion in its eyes. It had been raining on and off for 2 days, cold rain that soaked through everything. The dog's fur was matted and muddy, and now that Marcus looked closer, he could see a scrape along its right shoulder, the fur torn away, the skin beneath angry and red. Without thinking, Marcus approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. The dog watched him come, but didn't move from its post. When Marcus was close enough, he crouched down, making himself smaller, less intimidating. "Can I look?" he asked, reaching out slowly toward the injured shoulder. The dog tensed but allowed the contact. Marcus gently parted the wet fur around the wound. It wasn't deep, but it was definitely infected. He could see the telltale swelling, the heat radiating from the area even through the cold air. "You need medicine," Marcus said. "Something to clean this." The dog just stared at the door, dutiful despite its pain. Marcus sat back on his heels, thinking. He had no money, no resources. He could barely take care of himself. But looking at this dog, this loyal, patient creature who showed up every day no matter what, who waited for someone who was never coming, he felt something shift inside him, a sense of responsibility he hadn't felt since before his mother died, since before the group homes and the streets and the slow erosion of hope. "Wait here," he said, then immediately felt stupid. The dog wasn't going anywhere. It never did during its vigil. Marcus jogged toward the CVS pharmacy 3 blocks away, his mind racing. He'd seen other homeless people. He still hated thinking of himself that way, but that's what he was, buying small items, sometimes begging cashiers for help. The pharmacist there, a middle-aged woman with glasses and graying hair, had seemed kind when he'd used their bathroom once. The pharmacy was just opening when he arrived, an employee unlocking the doors. Marcus slipped inside behind an early morning customer and made his way to the pharmacy counter. The same woman he remembered was there, setting up her station for the day. "Excuse me," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. He cleared his throat. "I need help." She looked up, and he saw her take in his appearance, the too big clothes, the unwashed hair, the dirt under his fingernails. But instead of the dismissal or disgust he'd come to expect, her expression softened. "What do you need, honey?" she asked. "There's a dog," Marcus said quickly. "A stray. It has a cut on its shoulder and it's infected. I don't have money, but I was wondering if maybe you had something that didn't cost too much, or that was expired. I just want to help it." The pharmacist studied him for a long moment. "A stray dog? Yes, ma'am. It's not mine, but it's hurt, and He trailed off, not sure how to explain why he cared so much about a random dog when his own situation was desperate. She didn't make him explain. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Wait here." She disappeared into the back and returned a few minutes later with a small bag. "Antiseptic wipes, antibiotic ointment, and some gauze. The ointment is expired by 2 months, so I can't sell it, but it should still be effective. Clean the wound with the wipes first, then apply the ointment. If you can get the dog to let you wrap it, the gauze will help keep it clean." Marcus stared at the bag, then at her, his throat tight. I don't have any money." "I'm not asking for money," she said gently. "Just take care of that dog, okay? And—" She hesitated, then reached under the counter and pulled out a protein bar and a bottle of water. "Take these too. You look like you could use them." Marcus's eyes burned. He took the bag and the food, his hands shaking. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you so much. What's your name, honey?" "Marcus. I'm Janet. If you need help, really need help, you come back here and ask for me, okay? There are resources, places that can help you." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and hurried out of the pharmacy before the tears that were threatening could fall. When he got back to the corner, the dog was still there, still waiting. Marcus sat down beside it and carefully opened the package of antiseptic wipes. "This might sting," he warned, "but it'll help. I promise." The dog watched him with those intelligent brown eyes as Marcus began to clean the wound, gentle and careful, taking his time despite the cold that made his fingers clumsy. The dog flinched once but didn't pull away, didn't bite, just sat there and accepted this strange boy's help while continuing to watch the door that would never open. For the first time since his mother died, Marcus felt useful, needed, like he mattered to someone, even if that someone was just a stray dog with a broken routine and wounded hope. Over the next week, Marcus and the dog fell into a new routine within their routine. Marcus would arrive early each morning and evening, bringing whatever food he'd managed to find, sometimes just scraps, occasionally something better when his luck improved. The dog would eat what Marcus offered, then take its position and wait, and Marcus would sit nearby, keeping watch over this creature that had somehow become the most stable relationship in his chaotic life. The wound on the dog's shoulder was healing. Marcus cleaned it every day, with the supplies Janet had given him, his touch becoming more confident as the dog grew to trust him. By the 5th day, the angry redness had faded to pink, and new fur was beginning to grow at the edges. "You need a name," Marcus said one evening as they sat together, the October sunset painting the Baltimore sky in shades of orange and purple. "I can't just keep calling you Dog in my head." The dog's ear, the one that worked properly, swiveled toward him, but its eyes remained fixed on the door. Marcus considered. How about Buddy? Everyone calls dogs Buddy. The dog didn't react. No, okay. Max? Charlie? Nothing. You're making this difficult. He thought about the dog's routine, its unwavering dedication to this spot, this door, this memory of someone who'd left. Loyal, Marcus said softly. That's what you are, but that's not really a name. Then it hit him. His mother had loved reading to him when he was little, before the cancer, before everything fell apart. She'd had a favorite book, something about knights and honor and staying true even when the world tried to break you. There'd been a character, a faithful companion who'd waited for years. Argos, Marcus said, like from the Odyssey, the dog who waited for Odysseus to come home. He'd heard the story in school, back when he'd still been going to school regularly, back when his life had resembled something normal. The dog turned its head, looked at Marcus directly, and for just a moment, its tail moved. Not quite a wag, but an acknowledgement. Argos it is then, Marcus said, and felt absurdly pleased that he'd given this dog something, even if it was just a name. That night, as Marcus lay on his bench outside Penn Station, he thought about Odysseus and Argos, about waiting and loyalty and whether hope was a strength or a weakness. In the story, Argos died right after Odysseus returned, his purpose fulfilled. Marcus wondered what would happen to this Argos when he finally accepted that no one was coming back. Would something in him die too? Or would he find a new purpose? The next morning brought a problem Marcus hadn't anticipated. He arrived at the corner at his usual time, but Argos didn't appear at 6:45 or 6:50. By 7, Marcus was pacing, anxiety gnawing at his stomach. The dog had never missed his morning appearance, not once in the 3 weeks Marcus had been watching. Maybe he's just late, Marcus muttered to himself, but he didn't believe it. Animals were creatures of habit, especially ones like Argos, who'd built their entire existence around a routine. 7:15, 7:30, still no Argos. Marcus made a decision. He headed toward the alley where Argos always appeared, the one off Monument Street behind an abandoned row house. He'd never followed the dog before, had respected its privacy the way he hoped others would respect his. But something was wrong. He could feel it. The alley was narrow and filled with debris, broken bottles, old newspapers, a rusted shopping cart tipped on its side. Marcus moved carefully, alert for danger. He'd learned quickly that alleys could be territorial spaces, places where the wrong step could get you hurt. "Argos," he called softly. "You here, boy?" A weak whine answered him. Marcus followed the sound to a gap between two dumpsters, where cardboard boxes had been arranged into a makeshift shelter. In the dim morning light, he could see Argos lying on his side, panting heavily. "Oh no," Marcus breathed, kneeling beside the dog. "What happened?" Argos lifted his head slightly, and Marcus saw immediately what was wrong. The dog's left front paw was swollen to nearly twice its normal size, and there was a gash across the pad, deep and bleeding. Something, glass, metal, he couldn't tell, was embedded in the wound. Okay, Marcus said, forcing himself to stay calm even as panic rose in his chest. "It's okay, I've got you." But he didn't have him. He didn't have anything. No tools to remove whatever was in the paw, no antiseptic beyond what little remained from Janet's supplies, no way to get the dog to a vet, even if he could somehow afford it. For a moment, Marcus felt the overwhelming weight of his own helplessness crash over him. He was 11 years old, living on the streets, barely able to keep himself alive. How could he possibly help this dog? Then Argos whined again, softer this time, and looked at Marcus with those brown eyes that had watched an empty doorway for months, waiting for help that never came. Marcus straightened his shoulders. "I'll figure it out," he promised. "Just like you'd wait for me if I needed you, right?" He thought about Janet at the pharmacy, about the kindness she'd shown him. Maybe she could help again, or maybe she'd know someone who could. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot he had. "Stay here," Marcus told Argos, gently stroking the dog's head. "I'm coming back, I promise you. I'm coming back." The dog's tail thumped weakly against the cardboard. Marcus ran. He covered the 3 blocks to CVS faster than he'd ever moved, his lungs burning, his vision blurring from exertion, and the tears he wouldn't let fall. When he burst through the pharmacy doors, wild-eyed and gasping, the security guard started forward, but Janet, blessed, wonderful Janet, recognized him immediately. "Marcus, what's wrong?" "It's Argos," he panted. "The dog. He's hurt bad. Please, please, I need help." Janet came around the counter without hesitation. "Show me." Janet locked eyes with her co-worker, a younger guy named Tommy who was stocking shelves. "Cover for me for 30 minutes, she said. It wasn't a request. She grabbed her purse and a first aid kit from behind the counter and followed Marcus out into the cold October morning. He led her through the streets at a near run, glancing back every few seconds to make sure she was still following, as if he couldn't quite believe an adult was actually helping him. When they reached the alley, Janet paused only briefly to take in Marcus's reality, the makeshift shelter, the evidence of someone living rough, before focusing on the injured dog. "Okay, let's see what we're dealing with," she said, kneeling beside Argos with practiced efficiency. The dog growled low in his throat, a warning sound that made Marcus tense. "It's okay, boy," Marcus said quickly, placing a hand on Argos's head. "She's here to help. She's good people." Remarkably, Argos relaxed slightly at Marcus's touch, though his eyes remained wary as Janet examined his paw. "There's definitely something lodged in there," Janet said after a moment. "Looks like glass. It needs to come out, but I can't do it here. He needs a vet." She looked at Marcus, her expression serious. "Do you know anyone? Any family who could help?" Marcus shook his head, staring at the ground. Janet was quiet for a moment, then pulled out her phone. "I know someone," she said. "Dr. Chen. He runs a clinic about a mile from here. He's good people, and he owes me a favor." She made the call while Marcus waited, hope and dread warring in his chest. "Ming, it's Janet. I'm good, but I need that favor. Yes, now. I have a stray dog with a serious paw injury, glass embedded, and—" She glanced at Marcus. "A young man who's been taking care of him. Can you see them?" A pause. "Thank you. We'll be there in 20 minutes. She hung up and looked at Marcus. "We need to move him. Can you carry him?" Marcus nodded, though Argos was nearly as heavy as he was. He scooped the dog up carefully, cradling him like he'd seen people carry injured animals in movies. Argos whimpered but didn't struggle, seeming to understand that Marcus was trying to help. The walk to Dr. Chen's clinic was the longest mile of Marcus's life. His arms screamed with effort, and twice he had to stop and readjust his grip. Janet offered to take a turn, but Marcus refused. This was his responsibility. Argos had trusted him. The clinic was a small brick building squeezed between a laundromat and a bodega, with a hand-painted sign that read "Chen's Animal Care" hanging above the door. Janet led them inside, where a bell chimed cheerfully, incongruous with the seriousness of their mission. A man in his 50s emerged from the back, short, with wire-rimmed glasses and grey streaking his black hair. Dr. Chen took one look at the dog in Marcus's arms and gestured toward an examination room. "Bring him back here. Gently now." Marcus laid Argos on the metal examination table, his arms trembling from more than just exertion. The dog's breathing had grown more labored during the walk, and Marcus's fear had grown proportionally. Dr. Chen worked quickly and efficiently, his hands gentle but sure as he examined Argos. "Definite foreign object in the paw. He's dehydrated and underweight, but otherwise in reasonable condition considering he's been living on the streets. Someone took care of him once. He's neutered and I can see old vaccine marks. You've been caring for him?" "Yes, sir," Marcus said, "for about a week, but he's not really mine. He comes to this corner twice a day and waits. I've been watching him." Dr. Chen glanced at Janet, who gave him a look that said there was more to this story. He nodded slightly and returned his attention to Argos. "I'm going to sedate him so I can remove the glass and clean the wound properly. He'll need antibiotics, and he should stay off that paw for at least a week while it heals. Do you have somewhere you can keep him?" The question hung in the air. Marcus felt his face grow hot with shame. No, I don't have anywhere. I don't even have anywhere for myself." The words came out before he could stop them, and immediately he regretted the admission. He waited for the judgment, the inevitable call to social services, the end of whatever fragile freedom he'd managed to maintain. But Dr. Chen just nodded, as if Marcus had confirmed something he'd already suspected. "I see. Well, that complicates things, but we'll figure it out. First, let's take care of our patient here." He prepared a syringe while explaining what he was doing, speaking to Marcus like an equal, like someone whose opinion and presence mattered. "This will make him sleepy. He won't feel any pain. The procedure should take about 30 minutes. You're welcome to wait in the lobby, or you can stay here if you'd like." "I'll stay," Marcus said immediately. "Thought you might." Dr. Chen administered the sedative, and within minutes, Argos's breathing slowed and his body relaxed. "He's out. Let's get started." Marcus watched as Dr. Chen removed 3 pieces of glass from Argos's paw, cleaned the wound thoroughly, and stitched the deeper cuts. Janet had stepped out to return to work, promising to check on them later, but Marcus couldn't have moved if he'd wanted to. He stood frozen at the examination table, bearing witness to this act of healing, committing every detail to memory. When it was done, Dr. Chen bandaged the paw and gave Argos an injection of antibiotics. "He'll sleep for another hour or so. When he wakes up, he needs to rest. No walking on that paw for several days." "How much do I owe you?" Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer would be impossible. Dr. Chen removed his gloves and looked at Marcus thoughtfully. "Let's talk about that." Dr. Chen led Marcus to a small office off the main hallway, leaving Argos sleeping peacefully on the examination table. The office was cluttered but clean, with certificates on the walls, pictures of various animals, and stacks of medical journals. "Doctor," Chen gestured to a chair, and Marcus sat, feeling suddenly exhausted. "How old are you, Marcus?" 11. "No point in lying. Where are your parents?" "My mom died 2 years ago. Cancer. Never knew my dad. And you're living on the streets." It wasn't a question, but Marcus nodded anyway. Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he said, "Here's what I'm thinking. The surgery and medication would normally run about $300. You obviously don't have that kind of money." Marcus's heart sank. He'd known it was impossible, but hearing the number made it real. "However," Dr. Chen continued, "I could use some help around here. The kid who used to clean the kennels and help with basic tasks quit last month to go to college. If you're willing to work, we can call it even. Say, 2 weeks of work, 3 hours a day after school. Except you're not in school, are you?" "No, sir." "When did you stop going?" "About a month ago, after I left the group home." Dr. Chen nodded slowly, processing this information. "All right, here's my offer. You work for me for 2 weeks. Cleaning, helping with animals, basic tasks. That covers Argos's treatment. But there's a condition." Marcus tensed, waiting for the catch. "You have to let me help you get into school. And you and Argos need a place to stay, at least until that paw heals. I have a storage room in the back that I've been meaning to convert to a recovery area for animals. It's warm, dry, and has a cot. You and Argos can stay there temporarily while you work off the debt and we figure out a longer-term solution." Marcus stared at him, certain he'd misheard. "You want me to live here, in your clinic? Temporarily. It's not ideal, but it's better than a bench outside Penn Station, which is where Janet said you've been sleeping. And frankly, Argos needs supervision for the next week. You're the only person he trusts." "Why would you do this?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "You don't know me. I could steal from you. I could—" "Marcus," Dr. Chen interrupted gently. "Janet called me for a favor because a kid she barely knows ran to her pharmacy, desperate to help a stray dog he'd been feeding with food he probably needed himself. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Besides," he added with a slight smile, "my own son ran away when he was 16. Lived on the streets for 3 months before I found him. I know what that does to a kid. I know what it takes to survive it. And I know that sometimes all someone needs is one person to give them a chance." Marcus felt something break inside him. not in a bad way, but like a dam giving way to release pressure that had been building for months. His vision blurred, and suddenly he was crying, really crying, for the first time since his mother's funeral. Great, heaving sobs that shook his whole body. Dr. Chen didn't try to stop him or comfort him with meaningless platitudes. He just sat there, present and patient, letting Marcus release everything he'd been holding in, the fear, the loneliness, the overwhelming weight of trying to survive when you're still a child. When Marcus finally regained control, Dr. Chen handed him a box of tissues without comment. "Sorry," Marcus managed. "Don't be. You needed that." Dr. Chen stood. "Come on, let's check on our patient and I'll show you where you'll be staying." Argos was beginning to stir when they returned to the examination room. His eyes opened slowly, unfocused and confused, and he made a small sound of distress. "Hey, boy," Marcus said softly, moving to the table and placing his hand on Argos's head. "You're okay. You're safe." Argos relaxed at the sound of his voice, his tail giving a weak thump against the metal table. "Good sign," Dr. Chen said. "He knows you, trusts you. That's important for his recovery." He showed Marcus how to administer the pain medication Argos would need over the next few days, explaining dosages and warning signs to watch for. Marcus listened intently, committing every detail to memory. This was important. This mattered. The storage room Dr. Chen had mentioned was at the back of the clinic, accessible through a side door. It was small, maybe 10 by 12 feet, but it had a window, a space heater, and, as promised, a cot pushed against one wall. Boxes of supplies were stacked neatly, but there was enough floor space for a dog bed and food bowls. "I'll clear out some of these boxes," Dr. Chen said. "Make it more comfortable. There's a bathroom right next door you can use, and you're welcome to use the break room microwave and refrigerator. I usually get here around 7 a.m. and close at 6. Those will be your hours too, at least for the next 2 weeks. After that, we'll adjust around your school schedule." "School," Marcus repeated, the word feeling foreign. "Yes, school. You're 11. You should be in 6th grade. 5th. I got held back a year when my mom was sick. 5th grade then. We'll get you registered at the school 2 blocks from here. I know the principal. She's good people." There was that phrase again. Good people. Marcus was starting to understand that Dr. Chen's world was divided into 2 categories, good people and everyone else. And somehow, impossibly, Dr. Chen had decided Marcus belonged in the first category. "I don't know what to say," Marcus admitted. "Say you'll work hard and give yourself a chance," Dr. Chen replied. "That's all I'm asking." Marcus nodded, his throat too tight to speak. "All right then, let's go get Argos settled in his new temporary home." The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of routine that felt almost like normalcy. Marcus woke each morning on the cot in the storage room. His room now, he'd started thinking of it, with Argos sleeping on the dog bed beside him. He'd feed Argos, change his bandage, administer his medication, then begin his work around the clinic. Dr. Chen had been right about the work being manageable. Marcus cleaned kennels, swept floors, restocked supplies, and helped hold animals during examinations when needed. He learned how to properly sanitize equipment, how to read animal body language, how to move calmly around anxious pets. The work was physical and sometimes messy, but Marcus found he didn't mind. There was something satisfying about it, something that made him feel useful in a way he hadn't felt since before his mother died. School had been harder to adjust to. Dr. Chen had enrolled him at Booker T. Washington Middle School, and Marcus had walked through those doors on a Wednesday morning feeling like an imposter. He was behind in every subject: math, reading, science, history. The other kids had inside jokes he didn't understand, friendship groups that had formed over years, a shared history he wasn't part of. But his 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Anderson, a woman in her 40s with warm brown skin and an infinite supply of patience, had pulled him aside after that first day. "I know this is hard," she'd said. "I know you've been through things most of these kids can't imagine, but you're here now, and that's what matters. We'll get you caught up, one day at a time." She'd been true to her word, staying after school twice a week to tutor him, never making him feel stupid for not knowing things, celebrating small victories like they were major accomplishments. Argos's paw healed steadily. By the end of the first week, he was putting weight on it. By the end of the second, the limp was barely noticeable. Dr. Chen declared him fit for normal activity, though he cautioned Marcus to keep an eye on it for a few more weeks. "He's resilient," Dr. Chen had said, scratching Argos behind his good ear. "Strong constitution. He's a survivor like someone else I know." It was on the 15th day, a Thursday morning before school, that Marcus realized something with a jolt of panic. He hadn't been to the corner of Monument and North Avenue in 2 weeks. Neither had Argos. The dog's ritual, the thing that had defined him, the behavior that had first drawn Marcus's attention, had been completely disrupted by the injury and recovery. And in the chaos of adjusting to his new life, Marcus had forgotten about it entirely. "What have I done?" Marcus muttered, looking at Argos, who was eating breakfast contentedly from his bowl. Had he stolen the dog's purpose? Had he broken something essential in Argos by pulling him away from his vigil? The dog seemed happy. His tail wagged more now. He played with a rope toy Dr. Chen had given him. He'd even started sleeping pressed against Marcus's cot instead of on his own bed. But was happiness enough? What if Argos needed to wait? What if that ritual was the only thing keeping him going? Marcus made a decision. After school that day, he'd take Argos back to the corner, let him complete his ritual, see if he still needed to. The school day crawled by. Marcus could barely focus on Mrs. Anderson's lesson about the Civil War, too preoccupied with worry about Argos. When the final bell rang, he practically ran the 6 blocks to Dr. Chen's clinic. "Can I take Argos for a walk?" Marcus asked, finding Dr. Chen in an examination room between appointments. "Of course. He needs the exercise. His paw should be fine for moderate activity now." Marcus clipped a leash to Argos's collar, another gift from Dr. Chen, and headed out into the crisp November afternoon. The sky was overcast, threatening rain, and the wind carried the smell of coming winter. They walked the familiar route to Monument and North Avenue, Argos trotting beside Marcus, with no sign of his former injury. When they were a block away, Marcus felt Argos's pace quicken slightly, and his heart sank. The dog remembered. Of course he remembered. They rounded the corner, and there it was, the boarded-up pawn shop, exactly as it had been. The padlock rusty, the plywood weathered, the graffiti faded. Nothing had changed. No one had come. Marcus unclipped the leash. "Go ahead, boy, if you need to." Argos stood still for a long moment looking at the building. Then slowly he walked toward it. Not the purposeful trot of before, but a tentative, almost reluctant approach. He sat in his old spot, directly in front of the door, and Marcus waited just like he had all those weeks ago. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Argos sat there, but his posture was different. His ears weren't forward and alert. His tail wasn't still with anticipation. He was just sitting, going through the motions of something that no longer held meaning. After 15 minutes, Argos stood up, turned around, and walked directly back to Marcus. He sat down beside Marcus's leg and looked up at him, and in those brown eyes, Marcus saw something he hadn't seen before, a choice being made. "You don't need to wait anymore, do you?" Marcus asked softly. Argos leaned against his leg, warm and solid and present. Marcus knelt down and wrapped his arms around the dog's neck, burying his face in the patchy fur that smelled like the medicinal shampoo Dr. Chen had used. "Me neither," he whispered. "I don't need to wait any more either." They sat there together on the sidewalk as the first drops of rain began to fall, and Marcus realized what had changed. It wasn't that whoever Argos had been waiting for had come back. It wasn't that Marcus had found his mother or gotten his old life back. It was that they'd both found something else, something neither of them had been looking for, but both of them desperately needed. They'd found each other. "Come on," Marcus said, standing and clipping the leash back on. "Let's go home." And Argos followed him, leaving the corner behind without looking back. The November afternoon was cold but clear, the kind of day where the Baltimore sky stretched blue and endless above the city's rooftops. Marcus stood outside Booker T. Washington Middle School, his backpack slung over one shoulder, talking with two classmates about an upcoming science project. "We should totally do the volcano," Devon was saying. "It's classic. It's boring," countered Jasmine. "Everyone does volcanoes. We should do something about renewable energy." "Marcus, what do you think?" Marcus grinned. "I think we should ask Dr. Chen if we can do something with animal biology. He said he'd help if we wanted to study something related to veterinary medicine." "That's actually pretty cool," Devon admitted. They walked together to the corner where their routes diverged, still debating, and Marcus felt that familiar warm sensation of belonging. He had friends now, real friends, who invited him to their houses, who included him in group chats, who'd been to his birthday party last month, a small celebration doctor. Chen had insisted on throwing at the clinic, complete with cake and presents, that had made Marcus cry when he'd opened them. "See you tomorrow," Marcus called as they split up, and he headed toward the clinic. He'd been living with Dr. Chen officially for 6 months now. The fostering paperwork had been completed in May, and while the social workers had been skeptical at first, a single man, a kid with no family, an unusual living situation, Dr. Chen's reputation and the obvious improvement in Marcus's circumstances had won them over. The storage room had been properly converted into a bedroom with a real bed, a desk for homework, and shelves for the books Marcus had started collecting. Argos was waiting inside the clinic's front door when Marcus arrived, tail wagging enthusiastically. The dog was healthier now, his fur shiny and full, no more patchy spots. He'd filled out, and the limp was completely gone. At night, he still slept in Marcus's room, though now he had a choice. He could roam the clinic freely, but always return to Marcus's side. "Hey, boy," Marcus said, kneeling to accept the enthusiastic greeting. "Miss me?" Dr. Chen emerged from an examination room, followed by a woman carrying a cat carrier. "Mrs. Henderson, remember, twice daily for the next week, and call me if the symptoms persist." After the woman left, Dr. Chen turned to Marcus with a smile. "Good day at school?" "Pretty good. Got an A on my history test." "Outstanding. I knew all that studying would pay off." Dr. Chen had been patient with Marcus's academic struggles, hiring a tutor when necessary, never expressing disappointment when grades weren't perfect, celebrating every improvement. "Dr. Chen," Marcus said, "can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really help me? I mean, I know what you said about your son and everything, but you changed your whole life. You took in a random kid. Why?" Dr. Chen was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "You know how you found Argos because he was doing something unusual? Because he was waiting for someone who never came, but he kept showing up anyway?" Marcus nodded. "I saw the same thing in you that first day. Janet called me about a dog, but when you walked in carrying Argos, I saw a kid who had every reason to give up, to become hard and bitter and angry at the world. But instead, you were using what little you had to help someone else. That kind of character, that kind of heart. It's rare. I couldn't let it be wasted on the streets." "I was really scared," Marcus admitted. "That first night here, I kept thinking you'd change your mind, that I'd wake up and you'd tell me to leave. Never crossed my mind. Not even when I broke that microscope." Dr. Chen laughed. "Okay, maybe for half a second, but equipment can be replaced. People can't." Marcus smiled, then grew serious again. "I've been thinking about something, about that corner and the pawn shop and whoever Argos was waiting for. Yeah? I want to find out who it was. I want to know the story. Not because it'll change anything, but because, I don't know, it feels like we should know, like Argos's story shouldn't just disappear." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "I think that's a good idea. How do you plan to do it?" "The library has old newspapers archived digitally. I could search for the pawn shop, see if there were any articles about it closing, maybe find out who owned it. That's good detective work. Want some company on Saturday? I could drive us to the library." "Really? Really? It's a mystery worth solving." That Saturday, they discovered the story. The pawn shop had been owned by a man named Robert Martinez, a veteran who'd run the business for 30 years. He died suddenly of a heart attack 18 months ago, and the shop had closed immediately after. He'd lived alone except for his dog, a mixed breed he'd rescued from the streets years earlier. The dog had disappeared after Martinez's death, and neighbors had tried to catch it but failed. The last line of the obituary mentioned how Martinez had opened his shop every day at exactly the same time, with his loyal dog always by his side. Marcus read the article 3 times, Argos sitting quietly at his feet in the library study room. He was waiting for Mr. Martinez, Marcus said softly. Every day, twice a day, at the times when the shop would open and close, he was waiting for him to come back. Dr. Chen rested a hand on Marcus's shoulder, and instead, he found you. We found each other, Marcus corrected. They returned to the corner one more time, Marcus, Dr. Chen, and Argos. Marcus had brought flowers, cheap grocery store carnations, but they seemed appropriate. He laid them in front of the boarded-up door. Thank you, Mr. Martinez, Marcus said quietly, for taking care of Argos, for teaching him what loyalty means, for giving him a reason to keep showing up every day, because if he hadn't, I never would have found him. And I think I needed him as much as he needed you. Argos sat calmly beside Marcus, no longer pulled by the need to wait. The three of them stood there for a moment, a man who'd chosen to help, a boy who'd learned to accept that help, and a dog who'd taught them both about loyalty. And then they turned and walked away together. The corner remained empty behind them, but it was no longer a place of endless waiting. It had become something else, the place where two lost souls had found each other and learned that sometimes the thing you're waiting for isn't what you're really looking for at all. Sometimes you're waiting to be found. If you've made it this far, don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next stories. Leave us a comment letting us know where in the world you're watching from. Your support inspires us to keep creating content like this. Thank you for being here with us.